Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm Ed Winchester.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Mimic, which came out in 1997 from director Guillermo del Toro. Iain, can you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows Dr. Tyler, played by Mira Sorvino. She has been tasked with creating a special cockroach to kill off the cockroaches of New York, which are carrying Strickler's disease, which is affecting the city's children. She creates the Judas breed and sends them into the sewers. But after 3 years, the Judas breed has evolved and is starting to mimic its prey, us.
Del Toro had quite a bit of success with a small film called Kronos. And that brought him over to America to start making feature movies for American studios. And kind of unfortunately, his first studio interaction was with Miramax. Importantly, Bob Weinstein, who famously interfered with the production of Mimic throughout its entire shoot, to the point where Del Toro disowned this film upon its theatrical release, saying that this is not the film that he intended to shoot, as his vision was, as I said, interrupted by Bob Weinstein on a daily basis. Miramax would turn up onto the set and tell Del Toro what he could shoot, what he could not shoot, and what will be removed in editing, which resulted in a film that he was unhappy with. It was only until 2009 when Del Toro kind of was called back and they asked him to do a director's cut for the film.
Wow.
Unfortunately, most of that material that they were shooting was interrupted and so therefore doesn't even exist. Other footage was destroyed in the long break between the theatrical to the Blu-ray director's cut release, and so only about 6 minutes of extra content was put in the film, which upset a lot of horror enthusiasts that were hoping for more creature shots and more gore, but all that was really added was extra character stuff, especially relating to the lead character's pregnancy.
Yeah.
All in all, the film was also pretty well received, which is a nice surprise considering that this is essentially a B-movie monster flick.
I remember seeing this film come out, and it came out at the same time as The Relic with Tom Sizemore, and the two of them are pretty much go along hand in hand. You know, strange creature turns up in a city, starts killing a load of people off, and the doctor starts to investigate it and then chases it down and kills it at the end. I always found Mimic to be a lot more enjoyable than The Relic, mainly because, and from, future watchings, Del Toro's eye for detail. And you just get shots of New York, and you get the snow, and then it's cut into the hospital, and you're starting to hear news reports of this disease, which is affecting the children. And you literally, you see Dr. Tyler walk in this room where all the children are affected, and she's convinced by Dr. Mann to do something. We then see her in the sewers. She drops off these CGI cockroaches, and these cockroaches wipe out the population of the cockroaches in the sewers. And then all of a sudden, it's 3 years later, and you come up to a priest running up to the top of a building being chased by something. I bet you it's a mutant cockroach.
So here's the thing, is that they're not really supposed to be cockroaches. And everyone always remembers them as cockroaches. Now, Dr. Susan explains that they are a mixture of DNA between a mantis and a termite.
Yes.
With the aid of genetics labs across the country, we recombine termite and mantid DNA to create a biological counteragent. A new species to be our six-legged ally in wiping out the roach population.
But they're genetically made to look like cockroaches to be able to get into the cockroach hive, you know, and to excrete that enzyme that all the cockroaches go and feed upon, which then ultimately allows them to starve to death. Because, I mean, we're not going to go into the details of cockroaches, but those are some resilient motherfuckers. Those things can fucking keep going. So it's like the way that she describes it when she's doing a press report, that, you know, there was there was no cure to the disease, so they had to face it from a different angle. They had to kill the carriers off right at the source by introducing these giant fucking Judas breed cockroaches that all the others would follow.
It is a scene that gets right under your skin when you see those cockroaches crawling all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, your skin just starts to itch and crawls all over. And I think it's gross just watching these cockroaches just get squished underneath the metallic canister that she's carrying around. It's like, it's disgusting.
It's that part after as well where her and Dr. Mann are kind of looking in, and you just see that kind of sea of dead cockroaches, and you're like, oh my god, that's fucking billions. But right from the start, I get the feeling that she is obsessed. You know, she's really obsessed. She's fucking carrying one of these things around in a jar in her bag and then looking at it like it's her baby. But there's also a part of, I don't know, kind of a Dr. Frankenstein thing going on, and I see in her where she's questioning what she did. Was it right? And it's like when she speaks to F. Murray Abraham, and he says to her, look, you know, 3 years ago, I'd have fucking told you it was an abomination and you were completely wrong. But I now have 2 grandchildren that wouldn't be here unless of what you did. But as the film goes on, she constantly questions, like, did we do it? You know, was it a good idea? You know, we don't know what we did. And I'm like, you're a fucking scientist.
There is there is a bit of an issue where obviously the film cuts 3 years later. And you're like, well, did they not do any follow-up investigation?
Yeah.
Did they not? I mean, I know there was no real way that they could have got their original Judas breed cockroaches back. I mean, the size of New York City and, you know, the location that they put them in, there's no way they were going to get all the samples back. But you would think that they would continue to monitor the situation, to continue to see what was going on, so that this wouldn't all become a big surprise when... Well, the shit starts to hit the fan.
Yeah, well, we have that fade, don't we? At the beginning, it's like 6 months later. Oh, they're all of them are dead, and we assume that all the Judas breed have died off because we found a couple of the bodies, you know. And then it skips 3 years later, but it's F. Murray Abraham's line where he's just like, "Look, you had them in the lab and they all died off, and then you stuck them out in the world, and the world's a bigger lab, and evolution has a peculiar way of just." Surviving. I mean, and I'm like, oh, yeah.
It's a common trope, isn't it, that that man plays God or scientists play God, and then it goes awry. You can easily make the comparison to like Jurassic Park, where these things weren't meant to breed and evolve, yet somehow nature finds a way.
I think it's likely some survived. Evolution has a way of keeping things alive.
But they all died in the lab.
Yes, Susan, but you let them out.
After the priest is killed, we're introduced to Chew as well.
Yeah.
And his character does make me laugh, where he's Mr. Funny Shoes.
Yeah,
Mr. Funny Shoes.
I mean, he's definitely an autistic child, but I love the way that he does mimic the sound of the creatures with a couple of spoons.
Yes.
That has always stuck with me. I've always remembered that.
He's the ward of Manny who shines shoes in the subway of New York. And they're kind of like the innocent civilians getting caught up in it. You know, you've got Dr. Tyler and you've got Dr. Mann who start to investigate these things because a couple of kids bring them a Judas breed bug. And Dr. Tyler looks at it and she's just like, this thing should not be alive. We really need to investigate it. And then you've got Josh Brolin's character, who's the partner to Dr. Mann. Now, this is the first time I'd ever seen Josh Brolin after his Goonies experience.
Yeah.
And obviously we know that Josh Brolin would go off to make amazing films later on, especially coming up as Thanos as well. But in this film, he is like the bumbling sidekick.
Piece of shit on the ceiling, huh? Figure that one out.
Here you go, Judge. Subway.
You know what? I mean, this is what I love about my job. I get to travel, see the world, and meet new exotic cultures. It's all bacterial, but hey, what the fuck, right?
You're not coming across to me as this cool sidekick who's going to come up with something really good to help out.
He almost didn't fit the chemistry of the other characters.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, he doesn't feel like a colleague that they would sort of relate with in
Yeah.
the film. And I didn't quite buy their reactions to when they found these giant turds hanging off the ceiling.
Yeah.
It was like an everyday in the office. There was no big reaction to it. I was like, that's a pretty serious kind of issue right there.
Yeah, it's the same when he pulls out. He's like, look what we found in the shit, and it's a couple of buttons. And the guy's just like, why do you think they ate that? Oh, maybe they need fibre. And I'm like, you're not even questioning this.
No.
The shit was hanging from the ceiling, and there's buttons in there. The Chinese woman's going on about these dark angels, and they're like, it's New York. Strange shit happens.
Well, that is true.
She's delirious. What's she saying?
I don't know, she keeps saying something like, the Dark Angels. She says they're coming to get her. Chinese people, man. They come up with some pretty wild stuff.
So, in my opinion, the film is a film of almost two halves. The first half is where we follow the CDC sort of characters in reinvestigating and rediscovering that the cure that they'd unleashed into New York has come back to bite them in the ass.
Yeah.
The pacing here does sort of waver a little bit until they do get into the full-on, the second half of the film.
Yeah.
Where it becomes an out-and-out horror film. But the first half sort of meanders a little bit. It's a case of they need to go and find more concrete proof of what's going on. So it's down into the sewers, then back to the labs, then down to the subway, then back to the labs. And it's like, what?
But then does that coincide with Del Toro? You know, his use of lighting in this film is extraordinary. You know, his use of lighting in all of his films brilliant. But it's like in this one, you can have the really bright subway and all the people walking around, but as soon as you close the door and go into another room and it's dark, it's dingy, water is running off the walls, and you're there and you're just like, I know something could be round the corner, and now we're going back to the lab. So you're kind of like familiar horror trope. The creature is there and then it just pulls back, you know, and they go back and they start investigating it, and it's not until they get, like you said, into the subway and they meet up with Charles S. Dutton's Northam character, that it feels all enclosed. It feels like there's no help from the outside world. It's just them versus the bugs. And these bugs are some serious motherfuckers.
Just leave it.
Well, no, wait. I think I'm almost there.
Fuck yeah, these creatures look badass. You know why? Legendary creature designer Rob Bottin.
Yes.
Designed the creature for this film. And we've listed off his previous work before. This guy,
Yeah, you know that.
to me, is a legend in creature effects. And I think it's great that he did the design, and then 3 different production companies were put to task of bringing the creature to life, whether it was the CGI cockroaches or the giant CGI creatures, down to puppets, men in suits, and animatronics. And all of the 3 companies' work put into the film, they pull it off really, really well. They were so proud, in fact, of their creature that they got into arguments with Del Toro, who decided that he was going to silhouette all of these creatures so that you couldn't see all of the details that were painstakingly put in there. And it was a creative choice for Del Toro to go, look, these creatures are amazing, but I don't want it right in the front of the camera. I want it in the background.
Yeah.
These are shadowy, stalking creatures that do not want to be in your face until they're killing you, essentially. And that comes across. And I think that's like one of the few times that Del Toro actually got his creative, push into the film. And it does pay off towards the end when you do get to see the creature in a lot more light. The sets in this film are also brilliant. Del Toro does seem to spend a lot of his movies down in the sewers.
Yeah.
With Blade 2, and then looking at the Strain TV series. I think we've had 3 seasons of wandering around in the sewers so far. And it's so effective at creating atmosphere.
Yeah.
As you've said, with the lighting, the sets, and knowing that those creatures are just in the background somewhere, and you can just hear that familiar clicking noise that they make.
Yes.
It just sets it up to succeed.
I mean, one of the things I totally forgot from seeing this film before was you follow these two kids who deliver the creature to Dr. Tyler, and they are wanting to make money. So they go back into the sewers to look for these eggs that they've been told to look out for. And they come across one, and you hear, like Gary said, the clicking noise, and you turn and you see this silhouette. And one of them's like, I think it's a guy. And they start to get scared, and the creature's disappeared, and it kills them off. You know, not many horror movies, there's a few, but not many horror movies go out their way to kill off children. And it's in this film, it's one of those things that made me go, everybody has a chance to die. You know, yes, okay, I believe that the main characters, because we're following them, are going to survive, but they are really going to get put in harm's way. They are going to be at risk. And if they get killed off, then that's just the way it goes. These creatures are relentless. They've got no remorse. They are just, in a way, it's that scene where she talks to the children. She says, look, they won't attack until anybody invades their environment. And I'm just like, right, okay, but you're telling us as well that if these things get out, they will fucking spread like wildfire. So we need to kill them in their little hive now before it gets too bad.
Yeah, you know, when the kids are killed off, it is a bit brutal and very shocking, as always when you see children killed in a horror movie. But I appreciate the fact that it didn't feel like it was done out of child hatred in any way.
No.
It really served the narrative, and as you've said, to prove that, you know, if you are in the nest of these creatures, survival is unlikely.
Yeah.
And at least this scene sets that up. Now, with the creature being territorial,
yeah,
and only killing people that is in its nest, essentially, is a bit off, because obviously we saw the priest at the beginning who got chased off and killed. I mean, he was on the rooftop, you know, he was almost free in New York City, and the creature still dragged him back into the tunnel. And then later on, we have the Dr. Susan, she's investigating the Judas thing, she's pinned it to the board.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm going to call him Long John. Long John is in her lab, and he's observing her. You know, and he breaks the light and he hides up in the ceiling.
Oh, brilliant scene! Yeah,
it's a brilliant sequence, and it's the film delivers on its scares. You know, and that's to the credit again of it being a horror movie. But at the same time, yeah, it doesn't kill her. It kind of takes the Judas bug and leaves. I'm like, so why didn't it kill her?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the one we see there is a female. You know, there's only one male, and he stays down in the hive because, in a way, the females are protecting him because he's the only one that can breed with them. But at the same time, I was starting to think, are these things intelligent enough that they recognize her? You know, do they recognize her lab? And it's when she pins it to the board and it starts to excrete that enzyme, you know, that maybe the creature didn't see her so much as a threat, but wanted to protect itself and its hive from, you know, she would say later, they're mimicking their predators, which is man. So maybe in a way they're just like, actually, we don't want her to get this evidence. We need to get back into the sewers or they will hunt us down and kill us. I think the priest got too close to them. And when when the priest got slashed, it drove the creature into a frenzy. And that's why it chased him all the way up to the roof. Because obviously we would see later on, you have Dr. Mann, Josh, and Charles S. Dutton's character Northam tasked with going into the sewers. And when they do get into there, they realize that the blood sends these creatures into a frenzy. And when they're frenzied, they're fucking even worse than what they were before.
It's kind of cool that at the beginning you think that it is just one creature.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, as you realize that they've laid these eggs, but then you soon realize that there are multiple mimic creatures. There's not just the one or two. There's lots of these bugs.
Yeah. That scene with Chew there, and he sees that one come out of the shadows, and then you see that other one. And I was just like, Oh, shit. You're going to need a rocket launcher.
A flamethrower. Yeah.
The war effort needs your effort. At work, at home, in your community.
Now, one of my favourite sequences in the films, because it's got that eeriness to it, it's when Dr. Susan's sort of in the subway on her own.
Yes.
And all the people go, and then she thinks she sees a person
Yeah.
down at the end of the other end of the subway. And of course, we know that it's not. And that's when you really get to see the full reveal of the creature. And you get to see that it is forming a face, a human face.
Yeah.
Which is just so creepy and disgusting. And then when it pulls back all the layers of the puppet until it turns into a flying CGI bug, it's damn creepy and very memorable. It looks a little bit ropey now when it kind of picks her up and drags her off.
Yeah.
But the sequence that follows, where she is then dropped into the middle of the nest, earlier in the film, she explains to the boys about how the insects will drop off their victims, essentially into the food chamber of the nest. And then when you see her in that food chamber and she pulls out that metal pole from the corpse and she's just expecting the whole nest just be waiting around the corner for her, I was like, the suspense and atmosphere just ramps it up a little bit each time.
Yeah, see, I got a question, right? So she wakes up in that room in the food chamber and that body is dead, yeah?
Yeah.
Why did the creature think it was a good idea to stab him with a pole?
Yeah.
Because she pulls the pole out of the dead corpse's body, and I'm like, so did the guy accidentally kill him?
I think he might have been thrown, impaled on it by accident.
Yeah, and then dragged off.
Knowing, yeah.
But yeah, that sequence is brilliant because she's walking around with that piece of pipe and she's shouting up to all the people walking along. I think that's the street that they're walking on. And the creature comes and attacks her. And some people might say, like, it's too dark, we can't see what's going on. But I think that's the point. You know, like you said, Del Toro didn't want the camera to linger on the creatures too much because you'd be able to sit there going, oh, it's just a puppet, oh, CGI is crap. It lingers on it just enough that when she stabs it and runs off, it's flapping around on the floor all frantic, and then it pulls the thing out, jumps up, and it's gone. And you realise, shit, these things are fast. You know, these things I'd love to see go up against a xenomorph.
Well,
see,
it's interesting because I kept thinking of aliens throughout the film. You know, the dark tunnels. These cockroaches are the size of xenomorphs, and they move at the same ferocity. Yeah,
yeah.
It's the fact that they sound metallic. You know, their legs just sound
the way they tap along the floor and
it's
things.
Just like that's going to do some serious damage.
Yeah. So Dr. Mann, Josh and Leonard have made their way deeper into the subway, and Dr. Mann and Leonard have been separated from Josh, and they tell Josh to go off and see if he can get some help. And this is where Josh Brolin does the kind of blonde, ditzy, you know, horror character trope of, I don't know how I'm going to get back. I wasn't paying attention when I was walking down
To be fair, I would be in the exact same position. I'd be like, what the fuck? You want me to go wandering through these New York sewers on my own?
Yeah,
there's things running around? You can count me out.
I'd just drop down. I'd be like, guys, I'm stuck as well. You know? But it's one of the weaker parts where Josh Brolin, he wanders off and he walks into this room and he finds some eggs in a cupboard, and one of the creatures is sleeping, which I'm like, okay, that kind of shows that these creatures aren't unstoppable. They need to feed and sleep, kind of like humans, which is obviously what they're trying to mimic. But it's just so weak with the fact he goes into that tiny little room, you know, and he's like, oh, I've got to climb up in that sewer grate. What's the most awkward objects I can climb upon? Oh yeah, I'm going to get this rickety old box table thing and a fucking sewing machine. That's not going to fucking help. Oh, but I'm trying to be quiet. You are really not being quiet. And it's the way that he opens that sewer lid, falls down, the creature wakes up, he jumps back up again, and it comes in and it stabs him. And he's grabbing hold of that wire like, I can still make it. No, I can't make it. I'm like, bye, Josh.
Yeah.
See ya.
It's an adequate sequence.
Yeah.
You're like, will he make it? Won't he make it? You know, you're not sure whether he will, because he is half pulled himself up.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
it's the fact that I actually care more for Charles S. Dutton's character,
Yes.
than I do for Josh Brolin's character. But at the same time, I don't know if that's the fact that Charles S. Dutton coming off of Alien 3. This police officer character reminds me of his prison character in Alien 3, of this guy who he doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want to be fighting this fucking thing, but he will have to put his life on the line when he has to. We obviously also followed Chew. Chew has wandered off. What the fuck, Chew? Seriously, I know you're special, but who wanders out in the rain? He wanders off into the church and he gets captured by the creatures. So Manny decides to follow in and rescue him. And so once all of our characters have kind of met up in that subway, you've got Dr. Tyler, Dr. Mann, Officer Norton, and Manny. And this is my favourite part of the movie, where they're trapped in that little subway car.
Yeah.
Like we said, the direction and lighting from Del Toro really makes it work. The special effects from Rob Bottin, even when you don't see the creatures, they're just smashing on the outside. It really, really works. And then you've got, for me, the believability from Dr. Tyler, where she is cutting into the creature and she knows what she's looking for. She knows what these chemicals will do. And she's just like, look, just wipe it all over the walls, all over the cracks. The blood from Leonard's wounds are sending these things into a frenzy. So we really need to keep them at bay. But just the enclosement, the claustrophobic feeling of, we don't want to be stuck in here for the rest of our lives. But if we go outside, we're going to get torn to fucking shreds.
I love the fact that when she's pulling it apart, she realizes that the creature has evolved to the point where it now has organs.
Lungs.
Specifically, it has lungs.
But there's the way that she obviously describes it, that their genetic manipulation, over 3 years for humans is more like fucking 300,000 year generations for the cockroaches. And so you sit there like, so you're telling me that if we let cockroaches carry on, they're going to start growing lungs and faces and start coming up and stealing people from the surface?
When I increased the Judas's metabolism, I must have sped up its breeding cycle. I mean, we're talking tens, hundreds of thousands of generations. I mean, who knows how many mutations.
Listen, I just don't fucking get this. How could the Judas evolve into this?
Think generations, not years, okay? It took only 40,000 generations for apes to turn into humans.
So?
We changed its DNA, Peter.
So, are obviously stuck in this tram. There's no power, there's no electricity. And so they decide, well, we're going to have to send somebody out there. Yeah. I can't go, I got a busted leg.
And somebody's got to go out there, you can count me out.
Right. So, the creatures sort of dissipate after they've smelt, the insect, I guess, pheromones.
Yeah, something like that.
And so they send a couple out to go and turn on the power.
Yeah, and you've got the whole thing as well between Dr. Mann and Dr. Tyler that they're trying for a baby. Now, yeah, I don't know how I feel about their whole relationship. At the beginning, it seemed really good. When they first met, they were working together. 6 months later, they're together. 3 years later, they're still together. But she seems distant from her partner. He's like...
It's interesting that you should say that, because Del Toro has said that these two actors...
Yeah.
They did not like each other on set throughout the entire production.
Ouch.
And they're supposed to be a married couple.
Yeah.
So there is a slight hint of that, almost, like you've just said.
It's like that part where she gets called by her friend Remy. And Remy says, you go get to the water filtration plant. They found something. And he's like, oh, but we're going down into the subway today. And she's like, oh, I'll catch up with you later after I do this thing. And he's like, what thing? And she's out the door. I'm like, what married woman does that? I'd be out the door after her like, what the fuck are you doing, bitch? Don't leave me alone. We'll go down to the fucking subway. But, they've got this whole pregnancy thing going on. They're trying for a baby. And it starts to hint towards a kind of Aliens twist towards the end, where she's trying to be this protective mother character. It's a bit weak, and especially when they're in the tram and, they're deciding, right, Manny, you need to go in there and you need to change the switches, and somebody needs to go out there and do the rewiring, and And Dr. Tyler's just like, well, I can do it. And her husband's like, no, you can't, because, you know, you need to get home. We need to protect you. We need to, you know, take care of you. And I'm like, oh, fuck off. Now you're just giving her plot armor. You know, she's invincible to the end of the film now because she's, 3 hours pregnant? Okay, right. So, Dr. Mann and Manny go outside of the tram. And I do like Dr. Mann's bit where he's down there and he's trying to put together all the wiring. And he turns and the creature's like right fucking there.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
And
he's sweating. He's holding his breath. He's like, will this pheromone hold off the creature long enough? And that's when you just see the creature's legs just right between his legs.
Yeah.
And then eventually it does scarper off in his panic as he just keeps applying more.
But it reflects to Manny's character, doesn't it? Because he goes out and he comes across Chew.
Yeah.
And the creature is there. And I watch him and he's just wiping his fucking brow with his fucking handkerchief. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And he just, wipes off. But that's the first time we will see the male.
Friends.
Come here. Please.
And the male can't fly and it's a lighter colour, but it's fucking just as vicious as all the other creatures. So the other survivors realise something's wrong with Manny, and Dr. Tyler goes out and she comes across Chew. Once the power comes on the tram, though, it shorts out. And I'm kind of glad it shorted out because I thought it would have been a bit of a weak chase ending of this train going down the lines. I'd rather it stay enclosed in the tunnels. But one of my favourite bits is Charles S. Dutton's sacrifice.
Well, he's kind of got a penchant for doing this after Alien 3. He's like, I'm going to go over here and distract the bugs long enough for you to make an escape.
Yeah.
But he really didn't need to do that. Because he didn't really distract them for very long. And it didn't really serve any purpose. If he had stayed in the tram, he probably would have just made it to the end and it wouldn't have made much of a difference.
Well, he was losing lots of blood. So he would have died of blood.
Now, there's the thing, is that he is losing a lot of blood, and at some points he's full of vigour, and he's angry, and he's being Charles S. Dutton.
Yeah.
And then in the next sequence, he's there, and he's like, oh, I can't go on. I've lost too much blood. And then in the next sequence, he's full of anger again, and he's full of vitality, and you're like, so... And then in the next sequence, he's holding his leg, and it's bleeding again. I'm like, what is it? Is he dying from this wound, or is he recovering from this wound?
Yeah, I always thought that. I thought if he just stayed in the tram and just started wiping blood over everything,
he would have stayed there till the end.
Yeah. Well, he would have probably still died. The creatures would have at least been distracted by the tram and would have attacked their way in, taken care of him, because he pretty much just goes outside to distract the creatures so the other three can escape.
Yeah.
So either way, if he'd stayed in the tram or walked out, he'd have accomplished the same mission.
Visually, it's great. I love the fact that he's still singing as he's dragging his ass down the rail.
Yeah. And I wish he'd done a couple of lines from Alien 3 while he was fighting the creature, like, fucking come on, motherfucker! Come on, motherfucker!
But it looks like the creature just gets a quick eye gouge and it's over.
Yeah, that's it. It bites his face.
Yeah.
I'm like, ouch. But then we follow the last three survivors. Dr. Mann gets into the main hive, which is quite a good special effect, quite terrifying. There's fucking eggs everywhere.
I love how he's chased and he closes that metal gate and the creature is hammering on it for ages. And he looks around and he realises he's in the nest. And he's like, well, maybe I can get out the way I just came in. And then the creature starts hammering on it. Like, I'm not getting out that way.
No.
Like, no, mate, you're stuck in this nest. I was like, he's not getting out of there. There's no way he's going to survive this. And he looks around and he sees all of the pipes. And he's like, oh, I can see the gas line over there.
Yeah.
Oh, look, there happens to be an axe. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to axe this gas pipe.
Yeah.
And gas is going everywhere. And the creatures start dropping out of the eggs. They're flying everywhere. They circle him. And he uses his lighter.
And it doesn't work.
You're like, oh, I guess that's it. This is where he dies. And then he's like, and then the creatures watch him like, what are you going to do now, huh?
Yeah, yeah. What the fuck, man?
And so he grabs the axe and he starts hammering, and waiting for that spark. And the creatures still continue watching him. I think they're a bit dumbfounded. They're like, check out this guy.
Yeah, we're just hitting the floor. Nobody's there.
Massive explosion. You saw the fireball rip through all the creatures, and then you see a dark shape hit the water.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure he's going to be dead from that blast, the shockwave, the blast, the fireball. Whether he's in that water or not, I don't think he's getting out of there. And it cuts away. And we continue to watch Dr. Susan and Chew try to make their escape. And now we're seeing the creatures a lot more on screen for longer durations. There's a couple of sequences where you see the bug sort of come in, look around, and then scutter off again. I'm like, it looks a little bit janky in places. It's still believable because you kind of sold, if you've made it this far into the film, you kind of sold on the idea and you're engrossed in the film, and so you kind of see away with some of the ropiness.
Yeah.
But it's still believable enough.
Well, that's it. That's what takes me back to the Relic. I enjoy the special effects in this a bit more than I enjoy them in the Relic. Even though the Relic creature is, pretty badass, when the camera lingers on it for too long, it's too CGI. And I'm just like, it just doesn't look right. Where in this, the combination between the practical effects and the CGI effects, you really have to kind of stop it at points to know which one you're looking at. But they move so fast, you're just like, fuck it, just run. I don't want to fucking look at it too long.
Now, the film does dissolve into, in my opinion, a really shit ending that really lets the film down for me.
Yeah.
Now, they end up on another subway station, and Chew, the boy, is down one end, and Long John is between him and Dr. Susan.
Yeah.
And the creature seems to be heading for the boy. I'm like, this seems very familiar to a certain movie we've already mentioned, Aliens.
Yeah.
And this is where, I think that Mira Sorvino has done an excellent job up to this point. But when you compare this sequence to that of Aliens, when Ripley's in the power loader getting the Queen away from Newt, to this sequence where she's screaming at the creature to get away from the boy.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard. It was so damn weak that it was absolutely laughable. And so the creature is not fazed by it. So she's like, oh, I'll quickly cut myself.
Yeah.
And she holds her hand up to the creature. Just like, and the creature, oh, I can smell blood. I'm going to change my target now. Slowly turns around and slowly makes its way towards her. And then
slowly fucking runs at her like a beast.
Well, at first it kind of just sits there looking at her funny. And then, thankfully, train's coming.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll just quickly run around the corner. Oh! Train hits the creature, and we see the creature struggle momentarily before we see a few limbs left in its wake.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was pretty terrible. And it doesn't end there, for as far as I'm concerned, for the ending being bad. Because they go back up to the surface, and all the police are there. We've had the fireballs eruption from earlier, so paramedics and rescue team are there. And the other professor comes up to her.
Yeah.
And is like, yeah, we're sorry, we killed all the creatures, but yeah, no one else made it out. And so she starts crying. She's like, I've lost my husband, but I guess now I've got this boy who I'm going to have to look after.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, yeah, okay. Film's ended. And then you can see a shadow. A creature, maybe.
Yeah.
Something down the bottom of the stairway. And she goes over. She's like, is that a mimic? Oh, no, wait. It's my husband. He's alive, miraculously, somehow.
Yay. Well, he died in the water.
and then credits. And I was just like, oh.
Yeah.
Really? You're going to...
I suppose the ending would have been a bit more darker if it was just her and Chew.
There was an original ending where the where Dr. Susan and Chew make it to the surface. They don't have the encounter with Long John, with the subway train. They make it to the surface, and Long John is there. Fully naked, fully human in his appearance.
Wow.
And he looks to Susan, and he tells her, leave. And so now you realize the creature is fully evolved. It can now speak. It recognizes her, and it warns her to leave. And then the camera pans out, and she looks around, and there are loads of people in trench coats walking around the subway station, and you're left to believe the takeover has happened.
Shit.
All the mimics are just walking around the subway station right now. End film. That was the original ending. There's no footage of it.
Damn.
Apparently it was shot because original test audiences hated it. And the studio was like, yeah, we need the good ending, bring back the husband, kill all the creatures. So I like the dark ending idea. I think that would have actually been a better launch point for the sequels.
But then you haven't seen it. I mean, you might have seen it and gone, actually, the special effects don't look well. The lighting is too much after everything you've already sat through, and you might have actually sat there and gone, actually, that ending's just shit. I'd have probably preferred it if the husband hadn't made it back and it was Dr. Susan and Chew just left. But it's F. Murray Abraham's character when he comes up and he's like, yeah, none of the creatures survived. We killed them all off, and nothing else could have survived either. And she's like, what about us? And he's like, no, I'm sorry. And then he walks off and he sees them hugging. And I kind of think in my mind where he stood there like, I'm a bad professor. I'm a really bad guy. I keep getting all this shit wrong in this movie. I shouldn't have even been here. And it's the fact when they're hugging, the husband and wife are there kissing, and I'm kind of sat there like, she's dirty and covered in cockroach enzyme. That's kind of wrong. And they're holding on to Chew, and I look down at Chew, and I'm like, you're definitely going in a home. You're too much of a liability. Fucking hell. I'm, taking those spoons off you right fucking now.
I've got quite a few memorable sequences in the film, as we said. The two children being killed off. It's not a favourite, but it's definitely memorable.
Yes.
Along with Chew's spoons mimicking the creature. Not favourite, but definitely memorable. So I guess for favourite scenes, I really liked the creepiness when Long John is stalking her in her lab.
Yeah.
And I also really liked the backstory to Long John when they're in the subway and Officer Norton's explaining that over the last sort of few months, the homeless have been reporting strange things in the subway.
Yeah.
They've been calling him Long John. And all the homeless have evacuated all of the New York subway system because of the creature, essentially. But, they haven't connected all the dots yet.
Yeah.
So I like that all of that little backstory was put in there just to give you more believability that events have been occurring over the 3 years that we're not privy to.
Yeah.
So I also really like that moment. And as you mentioned, the tram, it just ticks all of the horror tropes where they're stuck somewhere and they can't get out. And so they have to devise a plan to escape.
My favourite scenes, I mean, I've got a few, like Gary said, that the killing of the kids, it's not favourite, but it cements the fact that in this horror movie, everybody could potentially be a victim to these creatures. I love Mr. Funny Shoes turning up at the lab and the way he's on the ceiling and his head turns. The angle, the lighting, Mira Sorvino there. You're on edge. Like, is it going to attack? And then it's gone. It flutters away. You're like, oh. I do like Norman Reedus's little part. He just happens to appear. It's so funny to see him in this, and then obviously go on to Blade 2, and then obviously go on to do this TV series at the moment. I can't remember what it's called. Walking something. Yeah. I really love as well Charles S. Dutton. His performance in this just kind of makes everything a little bit more believable, because you've got these CDC scientist agents going around investigating this killer creature, but you've got this everyday cop caught up in it. All of his bits on the tram where he's bleeding and they're all trapped is brilliant. His sacrifice at the end, reminiscent to Alien 3. But it's his line. It's his line when he gets to the shit room. And there's fucking shit everywhere. And the doctors turn to him and they say, have you ever seen anything like this before? And he's like, Do I look like I've seen fucking shit like this before? What the fuck do you think I've seen shit like this before? Do you think I've seen somebody fucking crawl up the wall and take a fucking giant dump on the fucking wall? What the fuck are you? You know, and you stand there like, whoa, shit.
It's a great outburst. Love it, yeah.
It's brilliant.
Have you seen anything like this before?
Why are you asking me if I've ever seen some shit like this before? Do I look like I've seen some shit like this before? Hell no, I ain't never seen no shit like this before. Who the fuck would want to climb up these walls and hang one of these? Must have been a big elephant-ass motherfucker. I don't know the fuck.
I also love the special effects of the creatures. I think I love the practical effects more than the CGI. I really like the CGI, but it's the fact when you see the silhouetted long character stood at the end of a corridor, the way its face looks, it looks scary up close, and then when you have the reveal, it looks even more terrifying. But just those few moments really just, put me on edge.
I do recommend Mimic. I think the cinematography in this film is very, very good. I really like the lighting, the creature effects, and I think all of the actors do a very good job. There's a couple of moments where I think the pacing suffers just a little bit, but overall it is a very good atmospheric thriller that turns into a run-of-the-mill horror, still with some great shots, great creatures, and some great action. The suspense is there throughout. I think that the ending is a little bit weak, and it is the only downside that I can really put to the film. Other than that, if you're a fan of Del Toro, you have to see this film.
Yeah.
You know, it's way better than average by all accounts, and it's still quite enjoyable. I will say now to stay away from the sequels.
Well, I don't know. Mimic 2's not bad.
Mimic 2 follows a character from Mimic 1 who was the friend of Dr. Susan,
Yeah.
who sort of disappears halfway through this film to become the main character in the next film. And it continues the evolution of the creature.
Yeah.
But the effects are poorer, the locations are weaker, the acting is not there, it's not believable.
I said it was not bad, I didn't say it was brilliant.
It is, I'm saying that, it is fucking terrible. And then you get to Mimic 3.
Yeah, I've not got that far.
I'm just going to say I love Lance Henriksen, but when Lance Henriksen turns up, usually in later horror sequels, you know you're going to have a bad time.
Is Mimic 3 as good as Hellworld?
I would rather... I'd rather watch Hellworld.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my god, that's there we go. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
I do recommend Mimic. It goes up there with The Relic, 97 horror movies. And it just, this film works. Like I said, I do like Relic. It has some really good bits, and we'll review that at some point. But for Mimic, you know, it's Del Toro. The lighting is brilliant. The acting is brilliant. The special effects are brilliant. I could watch Mimic 2 if I'm in a Mimic mood and I haven't got the first one. But if I had to choose, I would pick the first one over the sequels really easy. It's just... you don't have to think too much, and you don't have to turn your brain off too much. You know, you just kind of have to sit down and just let the film wash over you. And if you do that, then the jump scares will get you a little bit, the special effects will get you a little bit, and you'll get behind some of the characters. There are some weak points. Like Gary said, the ending is a bit weak. Josh Brolin's death's a bit weak. The whole pregnancy, love factor between the married couple's a bit weak. But I don't care about that. I want to see Long John. I want to see him rip some people apart, and then I want to see him explode.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
You know, my father always wanted me to become a dentist. And I said, no way. I'm not going to spend my life looking into people's open mouths. What could be worse than that, right?